The NBA trade deadline is passed. Who are the winners and who are the losers? Bob Picozzi stops by and talks about the Sweet 16 as the bracket continues on, and hardcore fantasy baseball draft this weekend. This is the We Don't Know Sports Podcast. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the We Don't Know Sports Podcast. This is Chad the Mark with
Mr. Brown
and
Canadian Big A.
Welcome back, Biggie. We missed you last week.
I miss you fellas too.
Well, that's heartfelt and from the soul. I feel that. But guys, if you're listening to the show for the first time, we hope you enjoy it. Just hang out with us for a little bit. We'll try to give you something fun to listen to. And if you don't like it, you can just ignore it and don't say anything bad about us. Just, move on about your life and enjoy whatever else it is you do. But if you like the show, subscribe. Tell your friends. Help us out, man. We're just trying to enlighten your life. That's all.
Mr. Brown and Chad the Mark are the pot of gold at the end of my rainbow. I think they can be for you guys too.
All right, that's getting a little too feely now. Right. I don't know if I want to go down that road. So let's.
We are rated explicit.
We are. Oh, it's fantastic. All right, so we had a great interview. We just got done talking with Bob Picozzi. We'll have that later in the show. And you know what? We kind of joked with Bob a little bit about how guys like Barkley and it's really just Barkley. Kenny Smith does okay. But these guys covering the March Madness from TNT, they don't always do their homework, do they?
No, but Barkley don't even hide it. He was like, I don't know anything about anything. I want to talk about this, and we'll move on.
But Bob Picozzi is not that guy.
No, absolutely not.
And he's retired. Like, he doesn't work for ESPN anymore, but
here's a suggestion. Maybe they need to bring people back like Bob just to cover certain games for the tournament. And then just pay him a lump sum and let him cover it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just this tournament and then move on.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
It'd be better than Barkley and Kenny.
The fans would be happy.
I mean, you'd actually learn something.
Yeah.
It'd make it.
Give Andy Katz somebody to bounce off of.
Poor Andy Katz is on an island.
Katz has got to be sitting over there with these guys, just like racking his brain to say, what do I say that's not condescending, keeps me on the air?
Here's what happens afterwards. Him and Ernie go out to dinner and probably have a few drinks, and he's like, you think you feel bad. Think how I feel having to deal with them all year.
Hey, Clark Kellogg does all right, too.
Yeah.
I'll give him some love. He's doing good. But the thing I wanted to start with, though, is NBA. And we all know that we don't give NBA a lot of love, but, man, there's a lot of activity today. And we have the NBA trade deadline that just passed, and it feels way too late for this to be happening right now.
It's weird.
Like, I know the season's all kind of screwy because of COVID and whatnot, and they're only doing 72 games, but we're over halfway there, and now we're doing the trade deadline. So I feel like the teams that had a chance to really do something, they could actually do it this late in the year, which is nuts. But who are the winners and losers? What happened today?
To me, I think the Bulls are the big winner. They made moves. They went from being a team in a rebuild mode to a team that wants to win right now. Now, is that going to happen this season in the East? No, but when you look at the moves that they made, they have the foundation for their future. Vujic, I can't pronounce it.
Vujovic,
30-year-old all-star. He's got 5 years left.
Orlando guy.
Averaging 25 and 12.
Yeah. Can shoot from 40%. Deep. He is today's big man in the NBA.
So,
6'11", to 7 foot.
Let me ask you this as a fellow Bulls fan. So you said it might not be for this season, but the East is weak at the bottom.
They're only a game and a half
now, and they're going to make the playoffs, right?
I think what happens is they go from being that like 8 to 10 where they're the play-in. I think they're going to end up in the 4 or 5 seed once they get rolling.
They're going to make that much of a run.
You put those players in there with Billy Donovan, who is an excellent coach. I think they make a late season push, and I think they end up in the 6 to 4 range, somewhere in there.
Okay,
they're 5 games under 500.
Yeah,
right. How many games over 500 are they going to finish?
6 or 7. But when you look at what the East is, it's kind of top heavy.
It is definitely.
Philadelphia, Milwaukee.
Dude, Boston is an 8 seed right now.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
They don't play no defense. Just ask Bob.
They play 0. Yeah, we talk about that. But, all right, so anybody else that stands out? Like, I guess the Heat, right?
The Heat traded for Oladipo, but he's kind of, I don't know if he's on his last leg. He wasn't giving it all he had in Houston, coming off that knee injury a couple years ago.
20-plus games in a row. I mean, what would you do?
It's a little disheartening if you're a Rockets.
I like the move. I mean, like, you got Butler, shooters, and it gives him one more dog if he's in it.
Well, you get Jimmy Buckets. You got, like you said, shooters, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero. You bring in Oladipo, and the Heat are the front runners for LaMarcus Aldridge, who was a buyout, who's still a good player. And traditional, like where they play now, they play him at the 5. He
What's
can hit from
the
18
deal with
feet.
Aldridge? What's happening there?
Spurs gave him a buyout, or they're working on one now. I don't know if it's
So
official
he's
yet.
about to be a free agent.
Yep.
Okay.
So then the
Same
other
thing
big
with-
name is Drummond.
Yeah, Andre Drummond.
I keep hearing L.A.
Did they cut him too or buyout?
No,
They're working on it.
they're working on a buyout.
Wow.
And then Drummond's camp said he's going to go into workout mode and he'll decide on the team.
He needs to go into workout mode.
So, like, a few things for me. There was one trade. It was really weird. You had the Clippers and the Hawks.
Yeah, that's the one to me that stuck out as the worst trade. The Hawks sent Rajon Rondo to the Clippers for Lou Williams. To me, Lou Williams is an excellent pickup for the Hawks coming off the bench with that scoring.
bad the
Rondo
Hawks
was
suck.
washed last year. He had a nice trip in the bubble, and that was it. It's a weird move for the Clippers.
I don't understand it all for the Clippers. The Nets obviously already made their big move getting Harden early, so they weren't really looking. Milwaukee didn't do anything. The Lakers didn't do anything.
No, you know, the move that I think is going to change the West if things go the way I want them to go because I love the Nuggets.
I know. Yeah.
Aaron Gordon to the Nuggets. I love that move.
Yeah, I mean that's a guy that adds a lot to that team.
Yep.
And what did Orlando get out of all this? They just blew their team.
They just
up.
got a free pass to the G League.
That's
Whatever you
they're
call
going-
it now.
They got a bunch of draft
downgraded.
picks. Like they're not
gonna be like
exactly the
soccer.
Oklahoma City Thunder, but they got a bunch of picks. What was that
bad.
thing you told me about the Thunder having how many picks?
In the next 7 years, OKC has 34 draft picks. They have 17 first rounders and 17 second rounders in the next 7 years.
I mean, are you just going to do the draft in Oklahoma City now?
Might as well.
They're like the opposite of the Rams in the NFL. That's. I don't know if you can build a team that way though.
It's I've never seen that way in the NBA. Like, I don't know. You got all these rookie deals, but we're coming a 7-year period.
That's insane.
So by the time you're still rolling in this, your other guys will probably already be on their next contract.
Yeah, so I mean, the question is, if you hit big, we'd be able to keep it together.
Right.
But if not, like, how many of those do you trade away and
Right.
try to get like a guy that a team doesn't want anymore? I mean,
an odd strategy.
they're well positioned. Let's see if it pays off, Cotton.
Exactly.
That's where we're at. Anything else with NBA? Because I don't follow it that
It's
closely.
still the Nets in the East, right?
Yep.
I mean,
The
As
Bucks
long
have
as
really
they're
turned it
playing.
on as of late, but when they made that trade for Harden, I watched play. I said Nets coming out. I think they'll win the title. Still with that, and I'll tell you what happens if it plays out this way. Drummond was projected to go become a net, but they weren't sure if he'll get a starting role because they have DeAndre Jordan.
oh, he's got to start over Jordan.
He goes in, he fits that team perfectly because they don't need anybody other than block shots or rebound. He's a younger DeAndre Jordan.
Well, and then they just said that J.J. Redick's going to sign with Brooklyn, too.
He got traded to the Mavs.
Did he?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what they got out of him, but he went to the Mavs.
Because he said he wanted to go near his hometown.
It could be just like we were talking about, what was it? Myers Leonard earlier got traded to OKC and then
he's
bought out
gone.
immediately. It could be the same deal.
So there's still a lot of dominoes still to fall.
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying? Okay.
The buyout market is there. So teams
Right,
like
right.
the Lakers who didn't make a big splash with any moves here still have a chance to do
I'm
things.
worried if I'm a Lakers fan because AD's been out for weeks. Now LeBron has the injury. He's going to be out multiple weeks, I'm hearing. So if they start sliding down from that top, I mean, they're not even in the top spot now, but let's say they slide down 5-6, they might be in trouble.
As long as they're healthy come playoffs, they'll be fine.
No, I don't think so. I think that it's more if they're down 5-6 and they have to battle through the teams that are at the top, like
You gotta
Nuggets.
play 'em anyway.
So, but yeah, here's the thing: if you're the 1 or the 2, you don't have to play them really till the conference finals. So you're going through the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Jazz as your trip. And don't
it
get me
just
wrong,
depends
if
on
they're
how healthy
healthy,
they
but
are.
I don't think they'll be healthy
But
either.
the fact their 2 superstars are hobbling into the playoffs,
Yeah,
that's
that's
a problem.
difference. That's what I'm saying. If they're hobbling into the play, yeah, they're done. But
What
what I'm
happened the
saying is if
last
they
time
do
we
get
had a
chance to get
superstar?
healthy, I don't think you can write them off so easily. Is all.
What's the last time we had a superstar with a calf strain? KD. I mean, that's what it is with AD. He's got a calf strain and he's out.
It's lasting some time.
Yeah.
I mean,
and what are the odds that both LeBron and AD come back and they're just full force? Especially LeBron's
not,
age.
Not very high. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with anything you guys are saying. I'm just saying if they happen to be healthy, I think they'll still.
You still like the Lakers?
Yeah, I do, and I hate saying that. You know, I hate saying.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really. Never mind. Last thing on NBA, real quick, unless you guys got something else. I saw or read a bunch of things about Kyle Lowry, but nothing happened.
Yeah,
No.
he's still in Toronto.
Is he a buyout candidate?
I don't think so. I think he's a lifetime Raptor. There was a ton of talk, and it's been that way for
Even the
like
Lakers were
4 or
talking
6
to him.
weeks about him getting traded somewhere. And at the end of the day, the Raptors didn't like what they were going to get back from it, so he's staying put. I don't think there's any buyout there.
That was just weird because he's like Mr. Raptor.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't do
Yeah,
that.
Mr. Raptor. At the same time, his name's been out there for like a month.
I know. It's just bizarre.
Yep.
I don't know. Everybody's wheeling and dealing right now, so it's still going to be the Nets, obviously. As long as all three of them, they're the same thing as the Lakers, right? As long as they're all playing, they're going to be okay. I guess Kyrie's on a personal leave of absence now.
He
or
fell off
something.
the earth.
It was his birthday. I think that's what happened.
He walked too far and he found
Literally
the
fell
edge.
off the earth.
Yeah.
All right, so if not the Lakers, who's your Western team?
I would go Clippers.
I just can't. I
All
don't
right.
know why.
I like
Probably Paul George in the playoffs last year.
I like Utah and I like Denver.
Denver, I like a lot, especially picking up your boy there.
If I were
Gordon.
picking 2 teams, I would take Clippers and Denver. The Clippers team I've seen so far this year, and they got rid of Doc Rivers, who was good at what? Making what is great become good. Paul George is on a mission this year.
Yeah, I will say
like
he's
them.
playing better, but let's see if it translates to postseason.
In a perfect world that I get to pick, Nuggets come out of the West. I love what they did. I love Jokic. Their whole team, their coach. I love everything
Denver's
they do.
fun to watch too, man.
Yep.
They'd be great. Guys, we talked NBA. I hope the fans are appeased.
And we kept it positive.
We did a positive, except for talking about the Lakers and their injury
Well,
prospects.
we can't do that. That's just being realistic.
That's it. We're just LeBron haters.
We're realist.
Okay, Boomer.
Baby steps.
Well, I know we're going to talk a lot about baseball season once it really gets here, and we've kind of held off the best we can. Mr. Brown, we know you're on your social media tour trying to find out everybody's favorite players from all the franchises. We're on day 30 now, is that right?
Yeah, day 30 with the Yankees, and then I got a surprise tomorrow
Ooh.
that I'll be breaking out, and it's not the Durham Bulls. I'll give you that.
Ooh, you're throwing shade there. I like. I think I might know what it is, but we'll just leave it for the followers to find out.
And then, but we'll leave once we're done with that. We're going to post a post with everyone on there, the team's most popular
yeah,
player.
we'll put together a little something nice. Yeah,
it's gonna be nice. But next week we do have a guest for opening day
we do.
for baseball. So
Is this a homer alert?
yes, it is.
Oh.
Mr. Greg Harp for Tomahawk Tomahawk Talk.
Gotcha.
And we're going to talk about their group down there, and a lot of Braves alumni are in the group.
Yeah, so this is unusual in the world of Facebook and social media groups and things like that. There's a lot of Braves players or former players.
I know you have Merker, you have Denny Nagel, Otis Nixon,
Avery?
Avery,
Yeah.
and there was someone else, but I can't remember who it was. But anyways, a lot of alumni in the group, and he's going to come on and talk about Tomahawk Talk, and it's going to be on opening day, so hopefully it'll be during a Braves win against the Phillies.
Well, I'm not a Braves fan, but I'm excited for it because, man, I can almost smell the fresh cut grass, the hot dogs, the beer vendors. Give me all of it, man.
Nice.
I'm ready, and we're getting ready. What are we doing Saturday, fellas?
Fantasy baseball draft where I draft the best team and finish last.
Second annual
That sounds
hardcore
right.
baseball.
Yeah, so we've been doing hardcore football for
Over 2
decades. And we recently got into baseball, and I enjoyed it because I won all last year. You know, I was,
Despite COVID staring us in the face, we said, we're drafting anyway. Despite the
I
uncertainty.
probably had COVID and was drafting with COVID at home on my couch.
We had a 10-team league last year. 7 were in person. 3 drafted remotely because of illnesses. We've upped it to 12 this year.
Yeah.
We've upped the ante this
Yeah.
year. We doubled the ante.
We took a good thing and made it great. We're the opposite of Doc Rivers.
There you go. So we went from 10 to 12, and 11 will be here. And we have one person who's unfortunately in Boston who will be drafting remotely, and that's it.
Yeah. So if for people who don't do fantasy baseball and might play around. Maybe they do FanDuel. Maybe they do fantasy football. What would you tell somebody about fantasy baseball just so they understand? Because I think it's a freaking blast. I actually enjoyed it more than fantasy football. And last year was the first year I really did it.
The difference for me is that fantasy football, you can set your lineup and then walk away. Now, you might need to go back in on Sunday and check the inactives. But overall, you can check it and forget it, right?
Yep.
Fantasy baseball, it's a daily thing. You got to check the starters. Are they starting? Cycle through your starting pitchers. You might, where it's a week long head to head, you might be like, I'm going to tweak my steals midweek to try to catch up on the steals. And you might pick up a guy who's good for nothing but steals just to try to win that one category. And it's a game within a game, much like baseball.
It very much is. Biggie, how do you feel?
No, I agree with what you said. In football, you got set it and forget it guys. You plug them in every week. The only week they don't play is their bye week. Baseball is completely different because you can have an absolute stud like an Acuna or a Trout who may be out that night because he has a back spasm. So if you're not paying attention and you don't take somebody off the bench, you got an empty slot that night.
And watch out for your Sunday day games.
Yeah. So the other thing that stands out to me is I feel like in football, you could draft a good team and maybe not do much else the rest of the year and still be really good if you drafted well. Where in baseball, you could draft a good team, but it may not matter because the game changes so much over 162 games that if you don't make adjustments and compensate for injuries or somebody gets hot, things like that, like you can be left on the side.
It was the first time many years I'd done fantasy baseball, and I loved how we did our league where you could have daily ads depending on what you were looking at as opposed to like the 2-day waiver period like a lot of the public leagues do. So there was a week I was playing, I don't know if it's you or Chad last year at the end, I had 100 innings pitched.
It was me.
It's like I may not win on
every
ERA,
starter
but I'm
out
gonna
there.
get volume.
He was like, I'm going to win wins and strikeouts, damn it. Screw whip and everything else.
But it's like you said, going for steals, it gives you that option. It's
On a Thursday, you can concede certain stats and be like, I ain't got a chance. And then you're like, let me go get these. It's really interesting. Like you said, it's the game within the game. There's so much strategy.
And you may have a certain team that might not be like, you have your closers and you have your mid-tier closers and then the kind of the bottom guys. You might have a certain MLB team that may roll with 5 different closers in one season.
So safe to say we'll probably go live some point Saturday.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And what's the weather going to be?
75 and sunny.
And we built our redneck engineered stand to put because we draft, nothing's online here.
Right.
Everything is in person. We got these stickers and stuff like that. So you really got to do your homework. You got to know what's happening.
Yep.
But hopefully our stand doesn't fall over.
It depends on how drunk everybody gets and if somebody falls and knocks it over.
Yeah, that would not be good.
We just got to keep them away from the fruity drinks in the back of the fridge.
It is. No White Claws and Trulies.
That's right.
They'll be okay.
Do either of you all have a preference on draft position?
I mean, I don't want to be on the ends. I don't think so.
So you don't want to be first and you don't want to be last?
No, I think I want to be in the middle.
if I'm not top 3, I'd rather be 12th.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay.
If I got to pick it,
I would
because
almost rather be third than first.
Yep. At 3, I have
2,
3
3 are
players
good.
I like.
Right.
I'm good. I don't want to be 5. I don't want to be 7. If I had a choice, I'm top 3 or give me 12th, because at that point I can get 2 guys I really like.
And another thing for those listening, that part of the reason why we call it hardcore football and baseball is no one knows their draft slot. So when we all show up, we draw a number out of a hat. That way you can't do a mock draft on the number you think you would be. I mean, because you don't know a number. So you can't be like, oh, you're 6 weeks in advance and draft mock drafts at 6 over and over and over.
No dice here.
Now you just show up and be like, oh, I'm 8. Now let's roll with it.
Yeah, it's not like when you do a mock
get
draft,
15
like you
minutes
just
notice.
said, you can pick your slot. Or we finished last year and I finished second, so I'm a
Right.
second pick. Nope. So
Random.
you pick a number and the draft starts.
It's like New Year's resolution, man.
They're all out the window by the second week.
Yeah.
I just look forward to the homers showing up and drafting all their squad's players, so that leaves all the ample players for
Well,
us.
the good news is we're in a league full of Reds fans.
So you know what? There's not that many to draft from the Reds, but hopefully they take them all early.
They're all getting drafted
I
this
see
year.
Joey Votto going in the 5th round.
We got a bunch of Reds fans. We got a Yankees fan. We got a Mariners fan. A couple Braves fans. And then I don't know what Pritt is. I think he's a Reds fan.
Maybe. Well, hey, I had no Reds players last year.
Here you go.
None. None. And I want it all. So that strategy is going to work.
I'm just going to say that's the only reason that you won.
We're never going to hear the end of this.
No.
The fact he won this COVID-shortened season.
Well, and here's the thing. If it had been year 3, it would eventually die. Since it was the inaugural season, we're 67. He'll still be telling us about it.
I just want you to know I'm being really mild so far. Come Saturday, it's going to be bad.
We know how you get.
I'm just letting you know.
No, we know.
Hey, this is your year with the belt, the crown, the World
There is
Series
no
trophy.
belt. We ain't graduated to a belt yet.
No, not yet. But it doesn't matter. There can only be one first, and it will always be me. You can't take that
Wait
away.
for Chad to ride in with a shirt he had made at the mall that says inaugural champion.
There might be a shirt. There might be.
I'm looking forward to it. It's a lot of fun. Good group of guys, good food, some
All right,
booze.
guys, Saturday, check us out. We'll be on Facebook Live at some point. Hopefully, we'll be communicating very clearly for everybody. We'll see you then. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we know it's March Madness, and it's been a really weird week. Like, we didn't have anything in the middle of the week. We're waiting on the Sweet 16 to start on the weekend. And Bob Picozzi, who I'm sure many of you remember the voice, you've heard him on ESPN radio. He's a huge fan of all college basketball, especially when we get to this tournament season. And I know he is devoting so much time to watching these games right now. He even knows where True TV is. I heard that. He found that somewhere on the cable guide. So he's that much of a fan. I don't know if he watches True TV outside of March Madness, but nobody does, right? But Bob, welcome back to the show, buddy. It's been a while. How you doing?
I'm doing great. My pleasure to be here. Glad to join you guys.
Man, I still just hear your voice in my head when I'm listening to ESPN radio in the morning when Mike and Mike's gone now. And I just used to hear those updates all the time. I don't get that anymore, man. So it's just nice to hear your voice. Can I at least say that?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I've been gone for a while. I've been gone, let me think now. It's over 4 years, almost 4.5 years I've been gone from ESPN radio.
Hey, time flies when you're living the COVID life, I guess. I don't know. But, hey, I know we're into the Sweet 16 approaching in the men's tournament. We've had a very interesting first couple rounds, but, just to kind of refresh some of our listeners, if they didn't catch our original interview we did with you, you're really big into March Madness. You used to cover a lot of games, especially the smaller conferences, huge in women's college basketball, big time with UConn. So just all that experience, you're able to sit back now in the retired life and enjoy this. What have been your thoughts so far on what you've seen from the tournament?
Well, my first thought is it's a reminder how much I missed it not having it last year.
That was terrible.
How it's taken away, and it was obviously so hard on the kids, especially the seniors last year. I'm a Seton Hall alum, and Seton Hall had a pretty good year last year, and they had their first team All-American in 68 years in Miles Powell, and he was a senior. And then, of course, the NCAA tournament was just yanked underneath him, from beneath him, and that happened for all seniors. And but COVID has impacted a whole lot of other families a lot more than it impacted Miles Powell, obviously. So it's great to have it back. I also think it's a reminder of how the difference between the schools is so minute. On the men's side, much more than the women's side, if you're a team that is good enough to play in the NCAA tournament, you have at least one really good player on your team, and you probably have more than one. And, we see with the young man from Oral Roberts, you can ride that guy.
I know. Ooh.
And that can happen. And it just happens more often. So, Oral Roberts not only, beat Ohio State, but then they knocked off Florida in the second round. And we saw, Abilene Christian knock off Texas. So, I don't have a horse in this race, with Seton Hall not making the tournament. I don't have a horse in the race. So I just, for pure enjoyment, I tend to root for some teams because from doing games, I know their coaches and I'm friends with them and I like them. I was crushed when Rutgers lost because I'm good friends with Steve Peichel. I used to work in local television in the Hartford market. And one of the big parts of my job was covering the UConn men's and women's basketball team. And, covered Steve for his 4 years at UConn. And I've known him ever since. Did a bunch play-by-play of a bunch of his games when he was at Stony Brook, and even did one of his games when he was at Rutgers. So I root for Steve. it's unusual for a Seton Hall guy to root for Rutgers. But I put that aside because for Steve and, for them to win, they hadn't been to the NCAA tournament since 1991. They clearly would have made it last year, but it got yanked away. And then it sure looked like they were going to beat Houston. And then they just completely collapsed down the stretch. So that was, I felt so badly for him. But yeah, I mean, it's just, and the other thing that comes to mind, my other takeaway is it's a reminder how the conference tournaments really matter very little.
Yeah.
When you get into the NCAA tournament, you look at the Power Five conferences. I mean, Texas won the Big 12 tournament. They go down in the first round to a 14 seed. Mm-hmm. Georgetown won the Big East tournament, wouldn't have even made the NCAA tournament if they didn't get that automatic bid. And they got absolutely crushed in the first round by Colorado. Georgia Tech won the ACC tournament. They lose in the first round. So, I mean, the conference tournaments helped at least two teams that from the major conferences. Georgetown and Oregon State would not have made the tournament if they didn't win the conference tournament, but they don't help you the next week. No. And it's a strange, you can't rely on who's playing well and who's not playing well. Villanova wasn't playing very well down the stretch. They were getting used to what life is like without Colin Gillespie, but boy, they seemed like they figured it out. They're playing pretty well now.
Yeah, and that's a lot of times what I think we look at whenever we're filling out brackets is like, who's the hot team coming in? Can you find somebody? Bob, do you fill out a bracket? Do you go through all
never
that?
Never have.
I was curious. I had a feeling you may not have, but I was just curious. So,
well, for years, I always did the women's first and second round of the women's tournament for ESPN. So, and that was the busiest time of the year. You don't find out till Selection Monday where you're going. And as soon as your bracket is revealed, then you immediately, the first thing I have to do is I have to book my flights. And then I have to start, gathering all the material on the four schools. And then the next, before you know it, you're on a plane flying there. So I would always rationalize and justifiably, I didn't have time to fill out brackets. But, I've never been a bettor. And I don't want to have to root for the teams that I have picked in the, I just want to watch and enjoy and root for who I want, for whomever I want to win. I want Steve Pikiell's team to win. Jay Wright is, my favorite coach of all time, from, doing games. I used to do his games when he was at Hofstra before he went to Villanova. So I always root for his teams, except when they're playing my alma mater twice a year in the regular season in the Big East.
Of course.
So I don't want to be in a situation where I feel like I have to root for the teams that I picked in my bracket. So it's, so I've never filled out a bracket. I'm sure I never will.
Yeah, I was going to say, definitely my biggest takeaway from the tournament so far is Oral Roberts' head coach has more career wins against OSU than Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, I saw that. That was a pretty cool swipe at Coach Harbaugh. But
people,
but I mean, it's great. It's great to see those teams and to see all the close games, come down the stretch. It's great. I mean, it's just fantastic.
So how do you feel about the schedule change this year? I guess they did it because of logistics revolving around, the quote unquote bubble and whatnot, but it's just really weird to have it on a weekend and then spill over into a Monday. And like, here we are all week with no games going on. And it was weird not to have it start in the middle of the week. Did that mess with you very much at all? I mean, I'm not a fan of the new schedule for sure. I hope it goes back.
It only messed with me because you asked me if I could come on tonight, and I said I can't. That'll be the Sweet 16. And then you said, well, no, they're not. And I didn't realize that because I hadn't looked at it. Well, I mean, I imagine they're doing it this way because they could, because teams don't have to travel. Right. In the past, they wanted to create, that gap, where teams could travel. I'm between the second weekend and the third.
Sure.
Teams, two of the teams that would win on that Sunday, they don't play again until next Saturday. So, but they would have to try, they always go back to campus. Well, they don't have to do that now. They're already in the bubble. So I actually think it's more, I'm not quite sure why they started it later nor why they put all first four games on one day. I don't know why they did that. But I really like the Sweet 16 being on a Saturday. so that all 4 games are their own entity and there aren't 2 games on at one. Because in the past, they would have the teams, they would fluctuate the starting times a little bit, but you would always have an overlap of 2 games in the Sweet 16 on both that Thursday and Friday night. And you won't have that this year. You'll have each game will be in its own window, and there's enough time between games so that there's no chance there'll be an overlap. So as a viewer, I prefer that.
All right, so let me ask you, out of the remaining 16 teams, is there anybody that you've watched that you're like, you know what, I know you're not filling out a bracket, but if you said there was a clubhouse leader, can you definitively say that, or is it too close to call?
Oh yeah, I mean, Gonzaga's the clubhouse leader. There's no question. They've played great all year, and then plus their bracket is it's wide open now. The 2 and 3 seeds in their region are gone, so it's inconceivable to me that they're not going to go to the Final Four. I mean, look, anything can happen, but I think I think probably USC has the most athletic team.
Their bigs look good. Those brothers.
So I would think USC would have the best chance of beating Gonzaga out of the 3 teams that are left in that region. And going into the Big Ten tournament, I really liked the way Michigan was playing. And then, of course, they lost in the Big Ten semifinals to Ohio State, and then they lost, their best player, arguably their best player. But they're playing very well right now. So although UCLA is playing great, UCLA is really playing great. But I would be surprised if Michigan didn't come out of that region. And it's. I don't think Oral Roberts is going to win 2 more games. Really,
it'd be a miracle.
Not too likely. And what's the crapshoot is the Midwest region. That's an absolute crapshoot.
With all the double-digit seeds there, it's crazy.
Yeah, well, except for Houston. Houston's number 2 seed.
Right.
I guess I think Houston will come out of that bracket. I think the 3 1 seeds that are left will all come out, make the Final Four, and probably Houston. That's just my guess.
Did you have any idea the Pac-12 was going to actually wake up in this tournament and do what they did? Like the Big 12 and the Big 10 have fallen apart, and then there's the Pac-12, who everybody's kind of written off as not being that good of a basketball conference, and they got a quarter of the teams left.
No, I mean, no one saw that other than Bill Walton, probably, conference champion. No, I didn't see that coming at all. And I think there are 4 Pac-12 teams. No, well, UCLA lost the last game last night, so I think there are 3 Pac-12 teams in the women's Sweet 16 too. So yeah, they've had a heck of a run there.
So, we're actually West Virginia fans, so we're heartbroken because, we're feeling like Huggins has a decent squad, and we're already dealing with the transfer portal fallout after the loss now. So I'm going to ask you about that here in a minute. But my biggest question is, Jim Boeheim has been at Syracuse for, I believe, 30 years at least, it seems like. Why is it that no one can play against the zone? As soon as you get to March, it's like everybody's like, what is this 2-3 zone madness? And they always seem to do well.
Well, I mean, they've only won the whole thing once, and I guess since winning it, they went to the Final Four in 2013. They lost to Michigan in 2016. They lost to North Carolina. There's nothing. I mean, the ACC teams didn't seem to have too much trouble with it this year.
Regular season, it's nothing, but when it comes tournament time, it's like, what is this?
I don't know. I mean, I think just the Syracuse kids are playing great. I mean, they're not the only team in the country that plays zone, that's for sure. So I mean, I think if Loyola, Oregon State's probably a toss up, right? I mean, if you look at the seeding, Loyola's the higher seed of the 2.
Only one's got Sister Jean.
If they can beat, no one, you can't tell me that if they can beat Illinois that they can't beat Syracuse, because Syracuse, plays the 2-3 zone. But if Buddy Boeheim continues to shoot the lights out like he is, then they could. I was going to say they could find themselves in. I was trying to think where the Final Four is, but they're already there.
Yeah,
they can find themselves staying in Indianapolis. That's a pretty good storyline, though, with Boeheim and his kid and people who criticized saying, you know, the only reason why he's there is because his father's the coach. And
he pretty much single-handedly knocked us out of the tournament in the second half.
He was launching from NBA range and wouldn't even think of twice. If you gave him any space at all, he was knocking it down.
Yeah, and so that, you know, now can it happen for another 4 games? You know, that's the big question. But no, he's playing great. And look at Oregon State again. The only reason why they're in the tournament is because they won the Pac-12 tournament championship, and now they knocked off a 5 and a 4, and they're in the Sweet 16, and they only have to play an 8. Now I realize it's an 8 that beat a 1, but you know, if you're Oregon State, if they inject a truth serum in you and you ask you, would you rather, if they asked you a week ago, would you rather play Loyola or Illinois in the Sweet 16? What do you think their answer would be?
So out of the teams that are seeded an 8 or higher, is there any one that you feel like might have the best chance remaining?
8 or higher. Well, because of how well they're playing, probably UCLA. I think they have great athletes and they're playing well. And sometimes, that's all, you go back to, the consummate example is UConn in 2011, where they had to win 5 games and 5 nights of the Big East tournament just to get into the NCAA tournament. And then they kept it going for another 6. I mean, I know Jim Calhoun very well from, my local TV job, and I did his local coaches show for 5 years. And I did a bunch of his games on TV when I was at ESPN. And he's always felt that when you're playing well, you can't wait till the next game comes. You just ride that. So, one of those schools, let me contradict what I said before. 3 number 1 seeds probably won't make the Final Four because it just rarely happens. So, right. You know what? I don't think Gonzaga is going to be the one to lose, but somebody else is, probably going to sneak in there. And, if you ask me which one had the best chance, I'd probably say UCLA.
Okay. So, I mean, we know Alabama likes to shoot, 100 threes in a game. So, if they're not hitting, UCLA can move right past them. It's not that far-fetched.
No, it isn't. And then, injuries can be a factor. It looked like the kid from UCLA hurt his ankle, Jusang, in the first game. And, looked like he might not be back, but then he was. And, they certainly can't advance without him, but they're on a roll. It's interesting. It's wasn't it interesting that 2 blue blood programs like Michigan State and UCLA had to play each other in the
playing game.
But I mean, look, the 2020 NCAA tournament selection committee, has to base it on what happened during the 2021 Freudian slip. That's to base it on what happened during the 2020-21 season, not the fact that UCLA won 11 championships. And of course, 10 of them happened, before 1975. So, Michigan, neither one of those schools has a beef to claim that they didn't, that they should have, right. They should feel insulted that they had to play in the first 4. They played their way into the first 4 by the way they played.
I mean, they're not Kentucky or Duke this year, so they have that to be optimistic about.
Yeah, I mean that's isn't that amazing? And then North Carolina made the tournament. They weren't very good this year,
right?
And then
they were like an 8 seed.
What's going on with Indiana?
So there's these stories out there that they might try to make a run after Brad Stevens, but I don't see why he would ever leave the NBA to go back to college.
Well, he says, you probably heard, he says he won't. He says he won't do it. He says he loves his job. I'm not sure I'm a huge Celtics fan, by the way, and what a huge disappointment they are this year. Mm. And, I think certainly some of that has to fall on Stevens. Particularly, they're a terrible defensive team. And I think their effort hasn't been all the way, and that has to reflect on him. Now, having said that, I mean, he's certainly not going to get fired. But I just don't, it's hard to believe that Indiana's program has sunk to the depths it has. Archie Miller was, had great success. And Tom Crean, these are guys with some credentials, and they left pretty good jobs. I remember Crean saying, people asked him, well, why would you leave with the success? And he said, because it's Indiana. And, and that's a pretty good answer. But boy, Indiana isn't what it used to be.
No.
It's just shocking to me that the program has remained so mediocre for so long. But I mean, they'll probably hire, a really good coach to get that job. But, Tom Crean was a really good coach and Archie Miller was a really good coach. And they're just, it's just hard to believe.
So is some of that kind of what you're hinting at earlier? We talked about how there's not a huge difference between a lot of these teams anymore. And it used to be like the mid-majors, you would just kind of look and see, hey, they got 5 seniors. They might be a tough out because they got so much experience. But like you said earlier, you can just have one guy that can ball out, and right. that makes all the difference. So you have such a close proximity and talent now between the teams. Now, some of them are going to have better depth, but is that something where a program like Indiana, where they're struggling, and is this a fluke just for Michigan State being in the playing game this year, and Kentucky and Duke being down because the one and done's kind of gone away? So, I mean, is that going to impact some of these blue blood programs going forward?
I don't think in the long term. I also think COVID. It was just a funky season. COVID impacted just about every program had some sort of stoppage. Some were worse than others. You hardly played any non-conference games, and all those tournaments that they have in November. I used to do a lot of them. They're great tournaments. All those 8-team tournaments, like the one in the
Maui shootout or stuff like that,
and the one in Charleston. And the one in Orlando, I did the one in Orlando 5 times, but there are a million of them. Many of them are ESPN events, and almost all of them have one team from each of the 5 power conferences. So it's great. No matter how you do in the tournament, it's just great experience. You play 3 games in 4 days against some really, really good teams, and you didn't have any of that. And then, practice was all disjointed. So if you're these one and done programs, and the guys haven't played together before, I'd like to think that had a lot to do with it, but I don't think it's a sign. I don't think it's a sign that the Duke program or the Kentucky program are suddenly going downhill. But that Indiana, that's different. I don't think COVID had anything to do with Indiana being lousy again this year. They've been lousy for a long time.
Yeah, unfortunately they have been.
I think once we get back to the normalcy, like you said, you got Duke and Kentucky on them. They're just too good recruiting-wise to stay down.
They're not going anywhere. I wasn't insinuating they were. It's just I've heard some people say that, and I'm like, nah, I'm kind of with you, Bob. It was just a fluke kind of weird year. It is what it is.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I give, Villanova had that long stretch where they didn't play games. They went. I think they went like 25 days without playing.
Almost a month.
How long was Baylor?
Yeah. Baylor was like 21 days. Yeah. So there's a couple.
I know it's a completely different example, but Colgate played, I think, the fewest games of any team in the NCAA tournament. Right? I know they didn't play any non-conference games at all.
So I know you're not a big Rutgers fan, but you were kind of rooting for them. But did I see correctly that they played every game scheduled this year? Did I see that correct?
I don't know. You could be right about that.
Which was so odd because you would just think New Jersey and whatnot, because they haven't had the best luck with COVID, unfortunately. I was surprised. I believe that they were one of the 2 teams in the tournament that didn't have a stoppage this year, which is crazy.
The thing about New Jersey and New York and where I am in Connecticut, we got hit very hard with the COVID. But the governors in each state, forget for the moment about the issues that Andrew Cuomo was having with the
we don't need to talk about that.
The reporting of the debt. But the fact of the matter is, all 3 of those states with very strong mitigation measures, they got the infection rate way down. In New York, after a terrible start in the pandemic, it got down below 1%. So no, I don't think you can point to New Jersey with the issues they had with COVID in March and April and May and maybe even in June and July, and say, well, therefore they're more likely to have. I think it's just a freak thing. In so many cases, most people don't even know. Our son had COVID. Fortunately, he didn't have a bad case, and he recovered. He's only 35, so he had that going for him. He has no idea where he got it. His job requires him to interact with clients, so presumably he got it from one of the clients. here in Connecticut, Gino Auriemma has no idea
Right.
how he got COVID. He was asymptomatic, but he had to self-quarantine, and as you know, he missed the first 2 games of the tournament and didn't fly to San Antonio to be with his team until yesterday. So it's a lot of it. I think it's just luck, or bad luck or good luck to stay away from it. And I really applaud. The NCAA is catching a lot of heat, for the disparity between the
weight room, right?
Yeah, and other things affiliated with the respective tournaments. But think about what just an overwhelming assignment this was to conceive of these bubbles and to play all the games. Like in the women's tournament, they actually have 2 courts in the Alamo Dome. And so I don't think they ever have 2 games going, and there's a curtain separating the 2. I don't think they ever have 2 games going on at one time, but they can start the second game right after the first one ends.
Right.
So it's, and in the first 2 rounds of the men's tournament, some of the games were played at Indiana, which I think is about 90 minutes away. And some were played at Purdue, which is about 70 minutes away. But it's amazing how everything is in the bubble. Have you guys ever been to Indianapolis?
It's been about a decade, but I've been there.
Yeah, well, they have that a lot of the city's connected by catwalks, so you can walk from your hotels, right? So I mean, they thought of just about everything. Unfortunately, the NCAA didn't think about the women's weight room, and that was a major faux pas.
It's a bad look. It's a bad look.
Kudos to them. Because otherwise, I didn't think they'd be able to pull off the season. I was astonished when the season started, and I didn't think there was any way to get to the finish line. I thought there would just be too many COVID stoppages, but I was wrong. But I mean, the only way to play the tournament is to play it in the bubble, and they're kind of taking advantage of learning. Observing what the NBA and the WNBA and the NHL did with that. I mean, the only way they were able to finish their seasons last year is because they played them in the bubble. And I didn't even think the NBA would be able to get a season done this year, with all the traveling and everything. And there have been some stoppages, but there haven't been as many as I thought. And now, we clearly have turned a corner.
Sure.
We're certainly not out of the woods yet, but, the world's a very different place now than it was a month ago with the vaccine, as more and more people are getting vaccinated each day. And I think, the future's obviously much brighter.
There's at least light at the end of the tunnel. That's for sure. So I got to ask you this question, just because, we're sitting down watching the games and whatnot. And we have the wonderful commentators from the NBA on TNT doing some March Madness. And we find that while they're hilarious, it doesn't seem like they know much about the game. But I was just curious on your thoughts if you ever get a chance to watch Charles and Kenny and those guys. How do you think they do?
One of my best friends from college texted me, and he said, how you always used to spend so many hours preparing, to do games? He says, well, Barkley does none of that. He doesn't know anyone.
No.
He just talked about the big dude from Florida. And my answer, my friend's name is Andy. My answer was, I said, Andy, I don't think I've watched any of the studio shows because, I go to another game.
Right.
And so I have them on the TV, but I have the sound down. So I honestly haven't heard anything they say. Now, I mean, they know basketball, that's for sure. So they know strategy. But, I really can't give you any firsthand observations because I haven't watched them. I do know that I worked with Andy Katz, and Andy knows his college hoops.
Andy's trying to hold it together.
Yeah, they threw Andy with Charles and Kenny.
Yeah, and, there's no doubt in my mind that, Barkley knows basketball, and, certainly Kenny Smith knows basketball. But I really can't give any firsthand observations on what their knowledge of the personnel is, because I haven't watched one commercial during the tournament. I haven't watched one pregame show, one between game show, or one halftime, because there's always another game to go to.
So right at the beginning of the pregame for Moorhead and WVU, Charles gets on there and he says, I'll be the first to tell you, I don't know anything about Moorhead State, and I'm not going to pretend like I do. But let's talk about Coach Bob Huggins. I think he's around 900 wins, and Ernie Johnson's like, yeah, tonight will be 900 wins. And then he went on to talk about Huggy for about 900 wins for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, at
and he
least
said,
he's
I don't know
honest.
nothing about Morehead State. I'm like, you don't even want to prepare or even throw one line or anything?
So, and Bob, I appreciate the fact that you're more focused on the game. We're not here to throw shade on anybody trying to do a job that they were just asked to do, but it is somewhat comical to watch it unfold sometimes.
Well, it's, and it really, there's no excuse for it. They pay him a lot of money. By the way, I don't know, when I was on the last time, did I ever tell you my favorite Huggins story?
Not, you know what? You did, but we were not recording for that. That was after we got done talking, and we were just kind of shooting the breeze for a while. So go ahead and share it again.
I'm doing a West Virginia St. John's game at Madison Square Garden. I'm doing the game with a guy named Tim McCormick, who played at Michigan, and he played in the NBA with the Sixers and the Nets. I don't know if he played for a third team. I don't know if you remember Tim. He's about 6'9". I think he was on the Michigan team that won the NIT back in the mid 80s. So we go over to talk to Huggins before the game. Huggins is the most relaxed guy in the world before a game. I mean, every coach handles their access with broadcasters differently. With Krzyzewski, it's very structured. You're not allowed to go to the practices unless you're Jay Billis, and you're summoned into the inner sanctum 85 minutes before tip. And then you get about 15 minutes. Now it's 15 great minutes, and you get great stuff from him. But Huggins gets there, like about an hour and 45 minutes before the game starts, and he just comes out and he just sits in the stands, and he's just like leaning back like that, and fans come up and talk to him, and he talks to them, and then you can just if you're a broadcast, you go over and you just get whatever you need out of him. So Tim and I go over to see him, and he reminds Huggins of the story. And Tim is from the Detroit area, and Huggy was an assistant at Ohio State. Hugs was an assistant at Ohio State, and he was recruiting Tim. And he stood up in Tim's living room, and he tried to demonstrate the way Ohio State, the proper technique when they're playing man-to-man defense with their lateral movement. He's moving from side to side, and he moves his arms, and he knocks down the McCormick family Christmas tree in the living room. Now, Tim said, truth be known, I was always going to Michigan anyway. He said, but that didn't make a great impression on my mom and dad. and Hugs remembered the story. He said, yeah, it's the only one I've ever knocked over. But no, he's a great guy. And it was very touching to see how his kids reacted to him, the moment he won his 900th. And, he's always deflecting praise too, like somebody mentioned he's only a couple wins away from Bob Knight, right? Doesn't Bob Knight have like 903?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, don't mention me in the same name with Bob Knight. I'm certainly not the coach that Bob Knight was. So I always liked him. He was a guy who was completely different than the guy you see, the competitor during the games on the sidelines. He's the polar opposite of that, away from that. He's a really, really nice guy. And everybody I know who knows him loves the guy.
Why is he not in the Hall of Fame?
I don't know, but he certainly will be. There's no doubt in my mind he certainly will be. But how many guys have 900? How many guys have 900 wins that aren't in there? I'm asking. I don't know the answer.
He's the only one.
It's
probably because he knocked over that Christmas tree.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling to me. Plus, didn't he win? What's the stat where he's the only guy how many wins did he have at Cincinnati?
I think he's got like 5.
Is it possible he's the only guy that's got 300 wins at 2 different schools? Is that possible?
It might be something like that.
Him and Roy Williams, I think.
That might be worth looking up.
That sounds about right.
Him and Roy Williams, because Roy Williams won 300 at Kansas and obviously at Carolina. But I think that's the answer. No, he's a great coach. He's been a great coach for a long time. And of course, this is the only place. He told me once that he used to sit on his grandpappy's lap, listening to the Mountaineers when Jerry West played there. So, for him to coach, for him coaching West Virginia is like coaching the Lakers would be for anybody else.
We're glad to have him, but you're right on the money. He's got 398 at Cincinnati, and he's 310 at West Virginia.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
All right, Bob, we appreciate you. I got one more question to ask. Just we don't get a ton into women's basketball. It's just unfortunately not something we get into, but I know you do. So just give us who's your clubhouse leader on the women's bracket here. Who do you see going all the way there?
I think it's more wide open than ever. I think UConn. I don't think that UConn necessarily has the best team. Paige Beckers is a fantastic player. She's already been compared favorably to the greatest freshman in UConn history, but she has more pressure on her than any of the other freshmen have because she became the best player on the UConn team, when she laced up her sneakers for the first time. And that was not the case. I mean, when Maya Moore was a tremendous freshman, but Tina Charles and Renee Montgomery, West Virginia girl, were already on the team when they got there. When Diana Taurasi got there, Sue Bird and Swin Cash and Svetlana Brosimova and Shea Ralph were already on the team. So I think three of the number one seeds could win it: Stanford, South Carolina, and UConn. I don't think NC State will win. And I think two of the two seeds, Maryland and Baylor, have as good a chance to win it all as those three others. So I think one of those five, and I've watched every game, and I would say out of all the teams I've seen so far, the team that impresses me the most is Baylor. So I certainly think UConn will get to the Final Four. They would not be able to survive on a night that Beckers has a bad game. So, I mean, Diana Taurasi, as great as she was, she had a horrible game when she got to the Final Four as a freshman against Notre Dame. She was something like 1 for 15 from the floor, and they lost. If Beckers has a bad game in the Final Four, UConn will lose. And so I think the other teams, each of the other teams I mentioned, have much more depth than UConn has. But UConn's got the best coach.
That's true. All right. See, Bob likes the one seeds on both sides. You noticed that, right? The women's tournament is different. You don't see the first day was all chalk. Yeah, it really is.
Chalk.
Yeah.
And the second day, only 3 of the lower seeds won. So no, I mean the women. There's more balance in the women's team than ever, but it's not still, 1 through 4.
It's still probably about 10 years away or so before it gets a little closer. I did a UConn first round game once on television, 101-29. You're not going to see that in the men's tournament game.
What do you talk about at the end of that game? Or second half, I should say.
What's the locker room conversation?
That's why you do all the homework you do. I mean, I'm a big believer in doing homework, and the average game, you wind up using only about 20% of it because the game, you let the game dictate what you're going to talk about. But you do all that homework just in case it's 101-29.
I would have asked him to do a running clock.
Yeah.
Just
the coach, it was a win over, it was obviously a 116 game, and they played LIU, and the coach at LIU was Tony Basella. And Tony then became the coach at Iona, and now he's the coach at Seton Hall, my alma mater, and his alma mater. And so a couple of years after that, he brought his Iona team to Gamble Pavilion. And I was, teasing him about the last time I said, do you remember the score last time? He said, yeah, 101-29. How could I forget that? And then when he got to Seton Hall, they made the NCAA tournament. And sure enough, they get sent to UConn for the first and second rounds. They played Rutgers in the first round, and if in an 8-9 game, and if they had beaten them, they would have played UConn in the second round. So I texted Tony. I said, congratulations, because it was the first time they went to the tournament in years. That's great, but let's see if he can score more than 29 points this time. So yeah, 101-29. Believe me, it's not because he didn't empty his bench. None of the starters played as much as 25 minutes.
I keep thinking of more things to ask you. I got another back to the men's side here. So Rick Pitino came back to the tournament. He's the Open Iona, and that's in New York, correct? I'm so hard for me to remember some of these schools sometimes.
It's in New Rochelle, which is immediately north. New Rochelle, Iona campus is like 15 minutes north of Yankee Stadium.
Okay, so it's like Yonkers area, kind of like that, just a little north of there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, see, I can do some geography. I'm okay. All right. So let me ask you this. He recently said that he loves his job now. He's happy where he's at. Do you believe that he's going to stay there for the rest of his career, or do you think he's just bound to land somewhere else?
That's a tough one. It's he's kind of toxic. And but he's less toxic now than he was a year ago.
Oh, I bet my dad a steak dinner he would never ever coach in college basketball again at a major level, and I was wrong. So he's back.
And then even more shockingly, a Catholic school hires him. Despite,
hey, we preach forgiveness.
The alleged sins he committed at Louisville weren't just paying for players.
Well, he won that lawsuit. That helped him out a lot.
But he's less toxic now. I mean, you could, if you were an AD, you could sell Rick Pitino to your president and the board of trustees at a big time, like what we were talking about before, Indiana,
right.
Than you could before. I don't know. That's a really tough question. He's, he says he's happy. My guess is no, it won't be his last stop. But I have nothing to base that on other than my opinion. But I do think he's one of the greatest coaches in history. I think, X's and O's and a game manager. I think he's brilliant. He's been successful wherever he's been, except when he was with the Boston Celtics. And his biggest problem there was his general manager, who was also Rick Pitino. He wasn't a very good general manager, but he did a great job at Boston University. He did a phenomenal job at Providence, getting them to the Final Four. And he did a really good job with the Knicks, before he, and then remember when he inherited Kentucky, they were really down. They were on probation. And they turned that around. They went to 3 Final Fours, 2 straight championship games. And then, the year after he left, Tubby Smith won it all with Pitino's players in his first year. So he's one of the great. And then he won another one at Louisville. He's one of the greatest coaches of all time. By the way, I was surprised it took him so long to get into the Hall of Fame. He should have been in earlier. Yeah. So now to answer your question, someone will probably hire him, offer him the job. And if the right circumstance comes up, I think it wouldn't be he could obviously make a lot more money than whatever Iona is paying him.
Sure.
And I don't know what Iona is paying, but he could make a lot more money. It wouldn't be, I don't think it'd be the money that would drive him. It would be the competitiveness in him. I don't think he's going back to the NBA though.
No.
I think
maybe he'll go to Indiana.
that wouldn't be, that'd be a bad fit.
They'd be on TV a lot more.
It wouldn't be a bad fit.
All right. Hey, Bob, man, we got to make this like an annual tradition. I really enjoyed just the conversation with March Madness. You're fantastic, buddy. I just say I feel enlightened and just positive walking away from this now.
Well, thank you. It was very nice of you to say. I enjoyed it.
Bob, always a pleasure, buddy. We appreciate you giving us the time of day, and I hope you're enjoying retirement, man. Just keep taking it easy, and you got to find room for a 4th TV in the living room so you can get that true TV game on there too.
I do. It's this. This is my 4th
TV. Whatever it takes. Hey, Bob, we appreciate you, buddy. You have a wonderful rest of your evening. All right.
Same to you. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye, Bob. Well, I've had fun tonight, but we always like to wrap up with a little bit of pop culture. We just like to give you a glimpse into our daily lives and let you know that, we're not just these personalities that you fall in love with talking about sports every week. We try to give you a little bit more than just sports. So in the world of pop culture, Mr. Brown, anything new and exciting?
I mean, it wasn't new for me, but it was new to my daughter. She's 13.
So this is a sharing moment.
Yes. Okay. I think the last time we discussed, we had introduced her to Wayne's World.
Yes, you did.
So this week, we had another, not 90s, 2004 we checked it came out. She got to watch for the first time Napoleon Dynamite.
Okay.
So she got introduced to Uncle Rico, for Pedro, and Napoleon.
I'm just curious how
she knows how important tots are now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Until somebody kicks them. Until somebody kicks them in your pocket.
So what's her take on Napoleon Dynamite?
She loved it.
Okay.
She thought it was great, and she was laughing the whole time. She was like, "Why does he walk that way? Why does he have that crazy look? I love his hair." And at the end, when he was doing the skit for Pedro, and she was like, "This is going to be a train wreck." And then he gets out there and he can actually move. She's like, "Wow, he's really good." Because he was just getting down
he did
to that cassette tape Kip's girlfriend gave him.
Do you know what band that was?
No.
It was Jamiroquai.
I remember that now.
Yeah. They're the one that
sang virtual
Insanity.
That video was crazy.
Yes, where they moved, the floor was moving. Yes. Okay.
So she thought it was all crazy. Like, she loved it though. She was like, "I'd watch this again for sure." So,
all right, I appreciate that. It's always nice when you share something with your kids that's before their time, and they appreciate it the way they do.
She was, which I didn't really. I picked up on it, but like how cringy and creepy Uncle Rico was.
Oh, he very much
is. But just like how he's like trying to get the bust must, whatever it's called,
increase your bust,
naturally,
yeah.
And then it was like he was telling the high school girls that, and he would have a nice day and drive off in his creepy van.
All right, so let me ask you this: just give me your favorite single scene, if you can, of the movie.
That's hard, man.
You gotta give me one. I'll give you mine. I'll start off. My favorite is just when Kip is trying to sell the Tupperware, and there's one where he's trying to show that it's strong and all that. So he goes out to the car and he puts it on, and he drives over it, busts it, jeez, and it just drives off in the shaggin' wagon van there that Uncle Rico let him borrow. That was, for whatever reason, I love that scene.
There's so many. I'm trying to think which one was my favorite.
You have to pick between which one became the best meme, because that's always the meme.
There's so many good ones.
You can always go with grab my arm. No, the other arm.
I thought it was
my other arm.
I thought it was funny when he was talking. Uncle Rico was talking to Kip about throwing the football over the mountains, and he's like, "Hey, watch this!" And he grabbed that steak and threw it and slapped Napoleon in the face, and it knocked his glasses off. Gosh, freaking idiot! And that was pretty good. I like that. You can't just pick one.
You can't. I was just trying to be mean and put you on the spot. All right, Biggie, I watched the movie, and Mr. Brown and I were talking about this earlier. So I between March Madness and everything else going on, I haven't done anything else except for work and watch the 4-hour cut of the Justice League from Zack Snyder.
And how was that?
So I got to tell you, infinitely better. Infinitely better. So much better. And, it was 4 hours long and everybody's going to rip on it for that, but he made it designed to be like an epic style movie. And everything that you saw from the first one, did you watch the original one?
No.
It was terrible. Don't watch it. Apparently Zack Snyder's never even watched the first one because it was so bad. And what happened was his daughter passed away whenever they were making it. And so they replaced him kind of in the middle. And so they tried to rewrite a bunch of stuff. It was just terrible. But it had depth, it had character development, and like Cyborg and Flash, who were like nothing in the first one. They actually were like central parts of this, and it was really good. So I guess HBO Max is smart because, they put this out there for everyone to subscribe to HBO Max and now watch it. But 4 hours, man. I watched a 4-hour superhero movie that wasn't Marvel. It was exhausting, but it was good. It didn't feel like 4 hours, actually.
I do agree that would be exhausting.
You're sitting on the couch. It's not that exhausting. But
there's a lot of up and down in 4 hours. You're old, you got to pee.
Yeah, it does happen. Now, Mr. Brown, you did watch the original Justice League, right?
Yeah, it was terrible. I liked Wonder Woman. The first one was good. I actually enjoyed Aquaman. I liked the original Superman.
Yep.
But when they all got together, they did the worst job of building the characters and telling the story. So it was so poorly put together compared to like the Avengers.
Terrible. So if you like Man of Steel, which was a really good Superman movie, like this movie has that tone, has that feel to it, has the plot development. Like it's just like you almost have to forget the first one. Like it was so bad. And like the end, everything's changed.
So do they build off this now to go forward with the franchise, or is what's done?
So that's the debate. It almost feels like they can't because they've kind of moved on and contracts and things like that. And you got the new Batman movie with that guy from Twilight.
Why do they keep switching Batman?
I don't know. They do that with Spider-Man a bunch of times too. I hate it when they do that crap.
I know, but the only one was the one with the Marvel universe, like with Avengers.
Right. So at least that fit in here. But with this, I don't know what they're doing. The problem is there's no like collective head that controls the DC universe, so you end up with a bunch of crap.
One thing's for sure, they'll be like, "I am Batman."
Batman. Yeah.
I don't use guns.
I'm not wearing hockey pants.
Yeah. It's so bad.
Where are they? I just want to talk to people like that all the time. That never gets old. And
you ever seen the Bat Dad?
Great.
That's what I think of every time you guys make that voice.
The Bat Dad.
On
Bat
Facebook.
Dad. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. He just goes around and tortures his family while wearing a Batman mask.
Really?
Yeah.
He talks like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll talk to his kids. He'll be like,
you should do that at the draft.
He'll be like, Mr. Brown, What's in your hand? Where did you get that? Do you have any more? It's just that nonstop.
Oh, how do they deal with that?
I don't know. But he says it to his wife will be like washing dishes or something. He's like, you're looking like you're gaining weight. And she'll throw stuff at him and things like that. I'm assuming we're not having relations this afternoon. Like, it's just stuff like that all the time. The stuff you find on social media. Now everyone stopped listening to the show, so we should probably
Yeah, that's terrible.
Sorry. We brought up Bat Dad. Anyway, so Braves Nation representing next week. That'll be interesting.
Tomahawk
Talk. So
Greg Hart.
We'll give them a little love there. Find them on Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe and listen to the show, guys. Don't just listen to it one time. Listen to it every week. We got guests and all kinds of nonsense and Bat Dad voices we'll do from time to time. We're here for you guys. This has been the We Don't Know Sports podcast. Have a good weekend, and be sure to tune in live for our fantasy baseball draft. See you next week.